Hello and welcome back, or welcome if it's your first time here. My name is Patrice and this is my YouTube channel where we focus on all things spooky, kooky, strange, dark and mysterious. I do occasionally do some very old, unsolved true crime mysteries, but mostly we focus on spooky myths and legends and scary supernatural beings or creatures of folklore. So, before we begin, please do me a favour and subscribe to the channel and hit that notification bell so that you get alerted every time I post a new video. And if you like the video, please do give it a like. It genuinely does help out the channel very much and I will really appreciate it. With that being said, let's get on to today's content. So today's spooky creature we are looking at is the mimic. Now, when I say the mimic, what do I mean exactly? Well, just to make things clear, I'm not going to be going into the story of the Wendigo. Now, that being said, because I'm not talking about shapeshifters here. I'm not talking about beings that shapeshift into animals or other people. I'm talking about an exact replica, whether it be a person's voice, which is known as the mimicry, or a doppelganger, which is known as a distinct replica of that person. However, the Wendigo is completely separate folklore. Now, I know that they do have a bit of crossover because the Wendigo is known to do a mimicry, which they essentially find out the right kind of tone, incantation of your loved one to lure you over, thinking that a loved one or even another individual entirely may need some help, and you go over there and it turns out that you're being lured to your doom. However, like I said, it is a separate folklore and I'm not going to be going into all of that today. But what we will talk about, and we'll start off with, is probably the one most known, and that is the doppelganger. Now, the doppelganger goes quite far back and is a German word. Essentially, a doppelganger is your exact replica, a carbon copy of you. However, this isn't your twin, this isn't somebody that's related to you, it's not somebody you even know. And in literature and in folklore, as well as in different horror movies or horror stories, they have always come with a nefarious intent. Now, I think the reason they got this kind of scary, evil persona was not so much that the doppelganger did anything, even though as times have gone on, it has been written as so. But initially it is believed that this occurred during around the First World War, and it was believed that you would see the doppelganger of your loved one who was away. And it actually didn't mean anything good. It actually meant that they had actually passed on already, and you were seeing a replica of them to let you know that this person had passed on, or it was a warning of their impending demise. People still believe that that is a possibility today, of course. And quite famously, there was the story of Mary Shelley's husband. He would dream about his doppelganger whenever he got ill. So whenever he became unwell, before he'd actually come down with whatever he'd come down with, he would dream about himself, like talking to himself, an exact replica. And then he knew that he was going to become sick. Now, the only time I guess we could say it's creepily associated is that the last time he saw his doppelganger, he did die the following day, and he saw this doppelganger in a dream. And what was strange is that it wasn't just in the dream. One of his friends had seen him when he wasn't there, it wasn't him, it was his replica, in the same place that he'd been featured walking in the grounds in his dream. So he dreamed of meeting himself in this location, and the person in real life saw him walking in that location. So that's very eerie, quite spooky. Not sure what happened there, but that sounds like a case of a doppelganger to me. So also when it comes to doppelgangers, there's the idea that it's either going to warn you. So if you see somebody else's, like I mentioned about the wartime stories, if you see somebody else's, then it's a warning about something happening to them that's negative, or worst case scenario, their oncoming demise. Or if you see your own, It is said to be either a warning that very bad times are coming, or also a bad omen of your death. Now, in many stories and literature, it has been written that no two can exist at the same time. So it's either you or it's them. So when it comes down to dealing with the doppelganger, quite often they now take on this evil persona and they will try to take you out and take your place in your life. Some people believe that these creatures, these beings, actually come from other realms, other planes of existence, and that they cross over, and they may do so because maybe something went wrong in their existence, in their life, and they can't be there anymore, so they want to take over yours. And they can because they look exactly like you, they act exactly like you, and they sound exactly like you, so why would anybody question that you weren't you? Or, of course, there's the other belief that we all have a doppelganger, that everyone in the world has one, but we are so far apart and we're in such different geographical locations that our paths will never cross. And if they do, it is negative for the both of us, as the two shall not exist together. So that's one idea when it comes to the mimic. Now, I don't know what it is about the mimic, but it has always, the concept gets under my skin. Like, I love all things spooky and creepy, but there's something about the mimic, the idea of seeing a relative and it's not your relative, or even spookier, like being in your house, where I've read stories where people have said they've been at home, like minding their own business, and they hear their partner call them, or, you know, their significant other call them, or their parent or child, and they answer them, and then they don't hear anything, and then it dawns on them that, hold on a minute, I'm the only one home. I know I'm the only one home, so who called me? And of course, at that moment, you get that creepy, eerie feeling, you know, that goosebump feeling, because it's just a very icky thought to imagine. It just kind of gets under your skin. It's a creepy thought. So when I think of that, I just always think of some excellent movies that I've seen that have portrayed the mimic. And I guess, you know, the kind that I will be talking about and getting into a bit more of today. Now, this creature I hadn't heard of until I started to do research for this video. And with this one, we are going back to Celtic folklore. And it's known as a fetch. And a fetch is similar to a doppelganger in that it's an omen. However, it's said to be both good and bad depending on when you see this and where you see it and how. So, for example, if you see a fetch in the morning, so when you first wake up, beginning of your day, that's a good omen. So that is a, you know, it's a good sign. It basically means you're going to live a long, happy, healthy life. So you won't kind of die of anything, you know, scary or horrible, and you won't be dying before your time. It's still, I guess, technically an omen of your demise, but you know that it's far in the future and it's not something you need to currently worry about. However, if you happen to see the fetch, which, like I say, is similar to the doppelganger at night time, then that is definitely something to worry about. Because if you see the fetch at night time, it means that something very nefarious is about to happen in your life, possibly even sudden death. And of course, if that be the case, then that's something you definitely don't want to look at. So sometimes they will appear almost shadow-like, so they look like your own shadow, kind of coming out of a wall and then taking on your appearance. But it's quite often said that with the fetch, as soon as you've kind of laid eyes on it and you've noticed it for what it is, it's then gone. So it's like almost similar to shadow people in the sense that, you know, as I mentioned in other videos, you look at them out of the corner of your eye and they're gone, but you definitely know you saw something. With a fetch, it's similar. So it could be your own shadow that literally mimics you, but then is kind of off-key, comes into appearance, you clock it, look away for a second, look back, and it's gone. But even just seeing it briefly at night time is very scary, and it doesn't mean anything good. There's also the other encounter with the fetch and coming across one at night, and this just really creeped me out, if I'm honest, and got under my skin. So they say, as the story goes, that the most disturbing type is tales where people speak about waking up at night to find that somebody is in bed with them when they're meant to be alone. So they were never sleeping in bed with anybody. Nobody was there with them when they went to sleep, but they've woken up in the middle of the night and there is a person next to them. Now, I know some of you may have seen this in horror movies, and I always find it so creepy when the person is like lying on their side in bed and then this strange hand kind of comes over and you're like, oh, that's not meant to be there, is it? Or that's not their partner, is it? You know, it's that kind of feeling. It's that creepy, very just disturbing idea, and often it is said that it can be seen not only as a person in the bed, but sometimes, and again, very disturbing, it's your cadaver. So it is your undead body that you see laying in bed with you. And according to folklore and British folklore, it is said that Elizabeth I saw her fetch on the night of her death, and servants responded in a panic, passing this story along, although the death of royalty, as we know, does often get more dramatised. But that's what has been said about Elizabeth I, that she indeed came across a fetch at night before she died. So it does feel very eerie and disturbing to have this idea that on the night of your demise, you see your own dead body first. Like, that concept in itself is just skin crawling. It gives me that goosebump feeling. And that's what I mean about mimics. They're just so creepy. And, you know, like I said, I love all things weird and wonderful and spooky, but mimics are something else. And I think it is the fact that they can look so real and so human, but they're not. And sometimes when you can come across certain people, they give you that feeling. They give you that feeling that it looks like I'm talking to a real person, but something is off about them. And we can get that feeling about a lot of people, believe it or not. So who knows if we have actually come across some form of humanoid rather than a real human being. Of course, another example of a mimic is probably the well-known changeling. So changelings come specifically from Irish Celtic mythology, and they are known to be part of the Fae. So when the Fae were forced underground by the manfolk, they then decided to make it their business to play tricks upon humans. And one of the tricks they would play is that they would take a human baby and replace it with a baby of the Fae, so a fairy child. That wouldn't actually look anything like the changeling. The changeling wouldn't look anything like the real baby, but to the mother it would. The mother would see their baby. Everyone around the mother would be like screaming at her that this is not your child, and she would get extremely defensive and possessive and just obsessed with this child. Like, how dare you say this is not my baby? And, you know, obviously go into that mama bear role and wanting to protect her kid, when really that isn't her kid, and her kid has been taken by the Fae. Now, what the Fae do with the human child is not always known. There's some differentiation in the stories there, but the idea is that the changeling is going to take the human child's place, and they do it part for trickery, but also so that the changeling is nourished, nurtured and cared for by the human and can essentially go back whenever they feel like it. But that concept in and of itself I always found really creepy, especially when I heard it, because I heard that quite long ago as a kid, and I used to always be like, could you imagine you're seeing your own baby and everyone around you is seeing some kind of strange Fae creature, and you thinking that they've gone mad and they're thinking you're in danger. Yeah, it's just a spooky notion in and of itself. So, I guess this is just one to really warn you, because there are many stories out there. I've come across them on many different social platforms, whether it be the more social media apps like TikTok or Instagram, or the apps such as Reddit, where people swear that these stories and tales that they're sharing with us are true. Of course, there are some really good short films out there that I do recommend if you would like to give yourself a spooky fright. If you look up on YouTube short films about mimics, you will come across quite a few, and they are creepy. There's quite a well-known one called I Heard It Too, and as always, I recommend if you're going to watch anything scary, do so at night. It's always better that way. Or if you must do it during the day, at least make sure it's a stormy, gloomy, rainy day. That being said, that is all from me today. But if you do hear a sound that sounds all too familiar, like a friend, a relative, or your partner, but you know that you're the only one there, what are they trying to lure you towards? And of course, if you come across somebody that looks way too much like you, maybe keep your distance. Equally, if you speak to somebody who comes across less than human, maybe they are there for nefarious means. Thank you for watching with me today. I really appreciate your company, and I'm so glad you could join me. Please do join me again next week for another spooky story and another spooky creature. I really enjoy doing these videos, and I hope you enjoy watching them. And please remember to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you can be notified when I post my next video, and please like this video if you did, and feel free to share if you feel like it needs to be shared. I really am grateful. Thank you very much, and take care.